Good morning, Dolphins fans. We're here on the FinSide. Brian Catanzaro and Paul Pickin. We're previewing the Miami Dolphins Buffalo Bills matchup here for week 2. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. On Twitter, I'm Brian Cat NFL. Paul is fanatic_pick. That's fanatic with a PH. So here we are, week 2 against the Buffalo Bills. Another big divisional matchup. The Dolphins are coming off a 21-11 loss to the Patriots. The Bills took down the Jets last week, which isn't too difficult these days, 27-17, in a game that really wasn't as close as the score sheet said that it was. In Miami this weekend, though, the Bills are favored by 6 points. So clearly Vegas thinks that they are the superior team. And given that they were in the playoffs last year and the Dolphins won 5 games, and with what happened in week 1, I really can't blame them for that. On the injury front, the Bills are going to be without 2 very important pieces of their defense, linebacker Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano. The Dolphins, as of right now, are going to be without Landon Roberts, who was signed in free agency. Devontae Parker is expected to be a game-time decision. The main story, though, here, Paul, is the Patriots ran for 211 yards on offense against the Dolphins last week. The Bills have a little bit of a different offense, but overall they have a quarterback that can run. They have an offense that can obviously be productive and is probably better. And Josh Allen, quite frankly, over the last 4 games has killed the Dolphins. So a lot of things up in the air here heading into week 2.
There are, and I'm thinking I would almost use Brandon Jones to spy Josh Allen, which feels weird to me to say for a rookie, but I mean, let's all temper our expectations here when it comes to Josh Allen running the football. He's going to run the football. He's going to get some yards. Don't be shocked if he gets between 50 and 100 yards in this game. It's Josh Allen and the Bills as a whole are developing an identity when I watch them. They're very cavalier, they're very aggressive, but they're also prone to those aggressive mistakes. You can see it on the fumble Allen had when he tried to dive for a few extra yards last week. You can see it when he fumbled down in the red zone. And while Josh Allen led the way for the Bills against the just absolutely woeful Gase-led Jets, I mean, the Jets looked like a team that it's going to be hard pressed to beat them out for the number 1 overall pick next year. The Bills also kept the Jets in the game in this last one with mistakes, with cushion that they were giving wide receivers. I mean, you look around that offense, and outside of Josh Allen, they didn't really have a rushing attack. So you have to play disciplined, you have to stay in your lanes, and you have to spy the guy.
Yeah, and when you talked about Josh Allen and running the ball, I mean, in the last 4 games, Josh Allen has 318 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns against the Dolphins. I mean, that's pretty incredible. And one of them was when you look at the game when he ran for 130 yards and the game when he ran for 95 yards, they wiped the Dolphins off the field. And that's what the Dolphins really need to avoid here in the first quarter, because 2 of the last 3 times the Dolphins and Bills have played, the Bills crushed them in 2 of those games, because after the first quarter, at the beginning of the second quarter, the Bills were up by 2 touchdowns. And that's what they did also last week to the Jets. They got off to a 21-0 lead pretty quickly. That's where they prefer to be so that they can lean on you the rest of the way.
Yeah, no, and really, the Bills are a team, like I said before, with how aggressive that they are. You have to play them smart, disciplined, but still aggressive. We need to see Kyle Van Noy step up this week. Last week was uh, to throw an Odell Beckham Jr. reference in, a real Cleveland steamer out of him. And it's you've got to keep him playing well in this one, and then you've got to play the receivers tight on defense and force the Bills to make a mistake. You might make a mistake or two. The Bills are gonna score in this game. They have too many talented weapons not to score. But if you play them aggressive, you're gonna force them to make some turnovers, and that's how you beat the Bills. If the Jets were anything short of pitiful, they probably would have had a chance against the Bills because the Bills take themselves out of games that they put themselves into.
Yeah, and what's weird with Josh Allen is that he does not throw a lot of interceptions. Josh Allen has 3 interceptions in his last 13 games, which is a very, very low amount. But in his last 17 games, he has 16 fumbles. So I think he's lost 7 of those 16. So they're not all turnovers, but without question, if you make them drive the length of the field and you stay aggressive but disciplined, like you said, Paul, then you really do have the opportunity to cause some key mistakes there for Buffalo. And on offense, the Bills, unlike the Patriots, they're a team that's going to have a more traditional type of offense. They play 11 personnel a lot, so 3 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 1 running back. They played that 70% of the time last year. They're going to expect to play that personnel more this year because of the addition of Stephon Diggs. So I think part of what caught the Dolphins off guard last week. They were terrible in run defense, don't get me wrong, but I think part of what caught them off guard is they didn't necessarily expect the Patriots to come out and play so many big sets and just run the ball down their throats.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head with that. The Dolphins expect Josh Allen to run in this game. Anybody expects Josh Allen to run in this game. But I don't think anybody expected Cam Newton to be as effective running the ball. No one knew what to expect from Cam Newton. A, because of the injuries, and B, because we've never seen really a true RPO offense out of Bill Belichick. I mean, it's no Bill Belichick running read options a weird thing to see. I mean, we should know better, but I don't think anybody full blown expected that much of an attack in that regard last week.
Yeah, and at the running back spot too, you've got Devin Singletary, you've got Zach Moss. We should look at about a 50-50 split there. Um, Not a big surprise last week that the Jets were effective stopping them. The Jets are actually, that's the only thing they're good at, is stopping the run, which is probably the least important thing to be effective at. But looking at their offensive line, the Bills are going to have a better offensive line than the Patriots too. I mean, you're going to have Deion Dawkins at left tackle. At right tackle, they signed Darrell Williams in free agency, kicked Cody Ford into the right guard spot. So they have the ability to control the Dolphins at the line of scrimmage, and that's something the Dolphins are going to have to get corrected here.
Maybe. I mean, it's they have a better offensive line than the Patriots, but and this feels weird to say, they didn't look like last week's Dolphins offensive line either. I saw a lot of plays where the Bills players were getting beat. The big thing with that is because of the threat of Josh Allen's legs, we need to see our defensive tackles stand up their guy more so than try to just blow past them. Because if this is the lineman, right, and you're pushing him back, and you pick a side, that quarterback's going to come around the other side and just take off. So you've got to be disciplined and stay in your lane. Almost let the linebackers and Jerome Baker do their job here a little more so up front.
Yeah, that's going to be certainly important. And on the defensive side of the ball for the Dolphins, they're going to be without a Landon Roberts. When I looked at Kyle Van Noy, even though I gave him the Coke Bus Player of the Week there, I certainly thought he played a little bit better than I thought. He was more assignment specific. Didn't create a lot of explosive plays, but that's really not Van Noy's game anyway. So yeah, it's going to be a big week. But the major matchup, though, Paul, is going to be, and really the matchup of the game, you're going to have Stephon Diggs, John Brown, and Cole Beasley going up against Xavier Howard, Byron Jones, and Noah Igbenogany. And that's kind of that's the matchup that the Dolphins, frankly, paid their money to win this offseason.
It is, and really one thing that I need to see from that secondary, I need to see them tighten up their coverage a little bit. It's if they do, will we see Stephon Diggs get behind them at some point? Yeah, we will. But at the same time, it's if you give them a cushion and you let Josh Allen stand back there and decide whether he's going to chuck it to the open receiver that you're giving too much space or run with the ball, that's when Miami's defense falls apart.
Yeah, no doubt about it. What else jumps out to you in this matchup here, Paul? Something that you're looking forward to for the Dolphins to be able to do?
I really want to see Fitzpatrick shake his stuff off here a little bit from last week. I was not impressed with what we saw out of him in last week's game. I need to see him step up in this one, not create those mistakes, leave those mistakes to the Bills. Aside from that, I really want to see the continued development of the offensive line in this one. I was so enamored with them last week and what they did, and I want to see a few more sets where we see Robert Hunt come in and run that, you know, 6-man front almost that can get that power running scheme going. What about you, Kat? Oh, so yeah, I mean it's definitely a scenario where we want to see the offensive line power through the Bills. It's the Bills have some good players up front. We all know that. We'll get Cat back here in a moment. But again, it's Miami needs to push them back, especially guys like Jordan Phillips in this one. Welcome back, Cat. All right, we'll get Cat back in a minute. Let's see what else we got for questions here. Yeah, I think they'll probably reshuffle the linebackers, Armando. We'll see who they wind up going with. I mean, we may see a scenario where instead of seeing an extra linebacker on the field, we see them run another safety or defensive back here. It's, you know, or we see Shaq Lawson stand up a little bit more than what we saw last week and kind of play that hybrid role a lot more. I think they're going to put the best 11 on the field, no matter which level that guy plays for in this one. What's up, Rob? You're in the wrong neighborhood, but welcome, buddy. Let's see. I do think that Estevan, he is going to be forced to throw on our corners. I think we can pull some big interceptions off him in this one, even though I know he's not interception prone. But if you can force him to stay in the pocket, you can make him make some mistakes. Casey, the way we stop mobile quarterbacks and welcome, we have to keep our D line disciplined and in their lanes, and we have to spy Josh Allen. It's huge in that one. Fanatic, we're not going to see Tua unless Ryan Fitzpatrick falls on his face in this one. It's I'd love to see Tua in a few packages. I'd love to see him get some garbage time pickups. I don't see this being a game that Miami blows out. The only way I think we see Tua in this one is if Fitzpatrick gets hurt or Fitzpatrick has another 3 interceptions in this one. I think that's a scenario where we start to see that happen again. Oh, shoot. That's right. Jordan Phillips did leave for the Cardinals. My bad, Super V. Thank you. Kat, are you back?
Can you hear me?
Give us. Yep, here we go. Cat's back, guys. Welcome back, Cat. Give us a moment, folks.
Thank you.
What's up, Cat?
What's going on? I can't promise that won't happen again, but I don't think it will. So where were we now?
We were talking about things that we wanted to see from the Dolphins in this one. I was talking about Fitzpatrick kind of shake off that rust from last week and really see the offensive line elevate and even see a few more of those packages where Robert Hunt comes in as that big tight end to block. And then
yeah, that yeah, you bet. So on offensively, obviously last week Ryan Fitzpatrick threw 3 interceptions, and one of them was embarrassing. One of them, Preston Williams fell down, and the other one, yeah, probably should have been pass interference. But look, when you go against a great secondary and you have a lot of contested catch throws that you make throughout the game, that tends to happen. You're going to have a receiver fall down. You're going to have something not called. So overall, I don't think Fitzpatrick had a clear 3 interception game. Only one was specifically his fault. Offensively, what I'm looking to have happen is I did not like how bland the Dolphins came out on offense last time. I don't really understand why Chandler Cox and Durham Smythe are on the field. If you, there we go. I understand that you need some blockers out there. I do, but if what I don't want to have out there are mediocre blockers who never touch the football. That doesn't make much sense. At that point, why wouldn't you just have Robert Hunt as your 6th offensive lineman instead of Durham Smythe out there as your 6th offensive lineman, and he never catches a pass? That's never made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and you kind of brought me to my next point, and one of our listeners actually commented on it in the chat. I really would rather see Lynn Bowden and Malcolm Perry active than Chandler Cox and Durham Smythe at this point. Even if you're only going to run a handful of packages with them, a handful of wrinkles, a handful of sets, you know what? They're probably going to do something more effective, even if it's just making the Bills burn a timeout. That's more effective than anything we've seen from Chandler Cox and Durham Smythe at this point. So
Yeah,
I'd love to see them active, and I'd also love to see Jason Strobridge active.
Yeah, I'd like to see Strobridge active too, and as well as Perry and Bowden. I mean, yeah, like you said there, I think one thing that look, Durham Smythe, word is that he had a great training camp. So I'm willing to give him another week, but I don't want him and Adam Shaheen playing 25 snaps combined. I mean, that to me seems like a little bit more of a waste of time, because you put them out there and then you bunch things together and you're not creating the spacing that you need to take advantage of a good secondary. And that's what the Dolphins need to do in this matchup here, because with Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano out, not only are they, does that hurt their run defense? It really hurts their pass defense. So if the Dolphins are able to spread that field out 3, 4, 5 wide receivers frequently and kind of take what's there, I think that's got to be the strategy in this game. But the offensive line also has to hold up for that to happen.
They do, and with those guys out in that middle layer of the defense, I'd be running crossing routes all day with Jakeem Grant. I'd be running crossing routes all day with Mike Gesicki. And at the end of the day, I'd also start slipping Durham Smythe or Adam Shaheen out when they're on the field, because no one expects it, and hitting them with a pass over the middle until these linebackers that have, you've got AJ Klein, who's a vet but nothing special, and what's his name again? The one
Tyler Matakevich. They signed him from the Steelers.
I thought they were starting Dotson.
Dotson will play too. It really, though, with those 3 guys, they're going to play a lot of 2 linebacker looks, and you should see those 3 guys getting swapped in there. But
the fact that we're debating which nobody gets to play there tells me I'd test them early and often. And I hate to say it for the Bills fans, but you look at last week with the Jets with Le'Veon Bell out and just a couple of okay guys and a shoddy offensive line, they were able to move the ball on the ground against the Bills and against this defense. So with Tremaine Edmonds out, Miami can run that ball in this one. And I'd like to see Gaskins and Breda get involved early and often, as well as in the screen game.
Interesting. I thought the Jets were shut down last week against Buffalo. I thought it was. Yeah. Oh well, Frank Gore went
out.
You're right. Gore and Adams combined, 4 yards of carry and a touchdown. So they were able to move it a little bit. I mean, and their run defense, to your point, has not been. It's not great. It's not terrible, but it's not great. And that's where the Dolphins need to come in, and whether they're rotating all 4 backs or whether they're going to have Howard or Gaskin take the lead role. I like what they're doing at running back. Actually, I think it's a good idea for them to go with the hot hand among Gaskin, Howard, and Breida. And if you can wear them down in that Miami Heat, something might be able to spring loose out of one of those running backs.
Yeah, and I want to see them run it basically right in between Solomon Kinley's ass cheeks. He showed me a lot last week, and he's a guy that's going to get some push right up that middle. The only thing that worries me is Ted Karras at this point. He needs a better game, despite the fact that the rest of the line around him had a good game last week. Which this early in the season, I expected to be saying the opposite.
Yeah, I watched Karras on the All-22, and yeah, there were some ugly plays. He's not a good athlete. I do think he's a slight upgrade over Dan Kilgore, but that's really not saying a whole heck of a lot. I wonder if there are a few more bad games, if the Dolphins start looking at Michael Dieter at the center spot. He's a little bit more athletic, maybe not as powerful, but Dieter did play some center at Wisconsin too, so that might make a lot of sense. But as far as the offensive line, to what you're saying there, Paul, if you're going to run crossing routes with Grant and with Gesicki, I think that's a great idea. It puts more pressure on the offensive line to hold those blocks, because those wide receivers have to come open for them to be able to operate that effectively. So at left tackle, Austin Jackson, who had a very good first showing, 38 dropbacks there, no sacks allowed, and I don't think he allowed a pressure either. But he's going to be tested a little bit more this week, because the Patriots really don't have somebody who can go heads up against the left tackle and win a lot. That's really all they can't do on defense. On the defensive side of the ball with the Bills, they do a really effective job of rotating in their three top defensive ends. That's Jerry Hughes, Trent Murphy, and Mario Addison. So Jackson's going to see a lot of different types of pass rushers here for the Bills.
He is, and I really think he's going to hold up. He's been such a pleasant surprise. I know you and I were both down on him going into the draft, mainly due to inexperience. We were high on him for the long game, but we weren't any type of believer in the short term for him. And he really has proved us wrong here. And yeah, you do need to have that the offensive line sustain their blocks just a hair longer in this one for that to occur. But you know what? You can also slip a running back out of the backfield. You're going up against some inexperienced linebackers. You start running the crossing routes and they start chasing those. Next thing you know, you're dumping it off to Breida and Gaskins and guys that can do good things in space, or maybe Bowden and Perry. But you hit the nail on the head earlier too. And sorry to keep using that phrase, folks, but it's true. We need to see something more exciting from this offense. Chan Gailey is another one that needs to shake the rust off in this one. They were boring as hell on offense last week.
Yeah, that's for sure. And look, I understand wanting to come out and establish the ground game in a game like that against New England. It's the first game. It's been a weird offseason. You expect the Patriots to kind of do that too. But it should be obvious that didn't work. They came out flat. They went 3 and out on the first drive. And then only when the Dolphins started to open things up on offense did they start having a little bit more success. And I'll go a step further too. I understand Chad O'Shea behind the scenes last year. There were a lot of problems, but the word is that he's the one that banged on the table for Josh Rosen. So that's a strike against him as well. But I never had a problem with how Chad O'Shea called a football game last year, as far as the play calling. And he used a lot of motion, which the Dolphins did not last week with these receivers. Jakeem Grant, having him on the field and not using him in motion, you have a useless wide receiver out there.
Yeah, it's well, I don't know if I'd say useless, but I will agree with you on the motion portion of things. And I correct me if I'm wrong here, Kat. I don't think Chan Gailey's ever been super famous for running a lot of motion on offense in the past. I mean, I'm not enamored. I'd rather have O'Shea back. You're right.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. I mean,
I'd love to make something up here, but it's true.
After one game, I'm with you on that. He doesn't use a lot of motion. He uses a lot of 3-4 wide receiver sets instead of a lot of fullback and tight end. We'll see if that works. I remember when Chan Gailey was here in Miami, 15, 20 years ago. I loved him as an offensive coordinator. And, I'm not putting the blame on him for the Patriots loss. That's for sure. But you better find ways to get a little bit more creative, because your strength on this football team should be what you have at wide receiver with Devontae Parker and Preston Williams, and a tight end with Mike Gesicki, and then these little counterparts like Jakeem Grant, like Lynn Bowden, like Malcolm Perry. And if you can't get creativity out of those players, then and the offense stalls, that's going to be a major problem.
It is, but I think a lot of it's going to come down to, and I know I keep saying this, but the offensive line in this one. It's if they play like they did last week, and one of our listeners is right, they are going to get a little bit more tested this week than they did last week, and that's okay. It's I think they're up to the challenge, um, but I think that almost hurts Ryan Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick seems to be one of those rare quarterbacks that's a lot better off when he's running for his life and having to make snap decisions. As smart as he is, it's just read and react, read and react, read and react. But it's the O line is going to be huge in this one. And then, really, if the defense can be disciplined and force Josh Allen into mistakes, and one of the factors we haven't talked about yet, Kat, is Andre Roberts returning punts. Watching the footage of the Bills last week, Roberts didn't put up huge numbers, but he looked like a guy that was always one move away from just breaking one off. And special teams is another one that needs to be disciplined in this one. I can't say enough about how aggressively feast or famine the Bills can be.
Yeah, Andre Roberts is a Pro Bowl returner, and that's gonna really come into play here as well. What I like is Jason Sanders tends to kick the ball out of the back of the end zone a lot, negating that. Matt Hawk, we know, can be Pro Bowl punter one week and absolutely shank three of them the next week. So he's gotten a little more consistent here over the last year, but he certainly needs to keep that up. And Danny Crossman, the Dolphins special teams coach, was actually the Bills special teams coordinator in 2018 and before that as well. But going back to the defensive side of the ball, Paul, yeah, I agree with the comment in the chat too. They're going to be tested more this week because defensively, this is one of the best secondaries in the league. The defensive line is better than the Patriots. The major thing that comes into play is linebacker, because Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano, what they did at linebacker and those 4-2-5 looks, that has a huge impact with them being out.
It does. It really, really does. I mean, anytime you lose a player of Edmonds' caliber, a guy we were huge on when he came out, not just because he's the son of Farrell, but because he's a hell of a ball player and he's good in pass coverage. Miami's got to take advantage of that. And if Chan Gailey can't find a way to be aggressive in this one and take advantage of the middle of that defense, the teeth of that defense being, we'll go with understaffed at the moment, then I'll start calling for Chan Gailey's head after this week. I hate to say it, but it's rough. One other factor I want to throw out there too, though, for you, Kat, is they have a young field goal kicker that had one hell of a bad week last week. I know we were just talking special teams. Tyler Bass, outside of 30 yards, 0 for 2, and inside of what I think it was 20 yards out, he just barely made the kick. That if Miami can stop their offense down in the red zone, until I see more from him, it could be an adventure watching the Bills try to kick field goals in this one.
In general, I have never seen such bad field goal kicking in 1 week. I mean, Jason Sanders, nails a 48-yarder, and it looked almost unusual to see anybody this past Sunday hit a field goal. So yeah, Tyler Bass, he's a 6th rounder, I think, out of Georgia Southern. Yep. So week 1 in the NFL, he comes in and it's just a nightmare. And you're right, that could play into it as well, because if you're the Bills and you try to, you're getting your yardage 10, 15 yards at a time, and you put together a 10-play, 60-yard drive, and you need 3 points on the board and you don't get it, that's a huge momentum shift. So that certainly factors in to the matchup too. So a lot of different things up in the air here, Paul. What is your prediction for this game?
I think Miami takes this one if they can play disciplined. And I actually had this as a loss for Miami initially, but watching the footage, watching the mistakes from the Bills last week, I do think Miami can take this one, but I think it's going to be tight. I'm going to go 23-20 Miami, and it's going to come right down to that wire. I think critical Josh Allen mistake in the closing minutes is the difference maker in this one.
Yeah, to me, the key in this is to be sure that the Bills don't get off to a quick start again. And because, like I said before, when they do get off to a quick start, we've seen it in 2 of the last 3 games. That plays right into the Bills' hands because they're going to spread the field out. Allen's going to run a lot. They're going to hand off the ball a lot to Devin Singletary and to Zach Moss. And I don't know if the Dolphins will be able to catch up if they fall behind 2 scores at the end of the first quarter. I don't think they have their defensive problems corrected yet. And that's a bigger problem for me than on offense when I think it was just being more creative and correcting mistakes. So I think the Bills jump out to a bigger lead here at the beginning of the game too. I'm going to say Buffalo wins by the same score they won by last week, and that's 27-17.
Ouch. And one other factor too, actually. Sorry, Kat. Sorry to put this out there. I know I've talked about the mistakes Josh Allen can be prone to. If Miami can be smart about it, Josh Allen carries that ball in a way that you get told at the youngest of youth levels not to do. He holds that ball out there like a sack of bread, and it's if you get even a little slap happy with him, you can knock that ball out all day. If he's in any way slowed down, I'd be throwing a hand at that ball and seeing what you can do. I think they could probably force a hell of a lot of turnovers and get in his head by doing so.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he holds the ball out like a loaf of bread, and he has a lot of confidence in his ability or in his giant hand to be able to hang on to that football all the time, which is not he shouldn't. He shouldn't feel confident. Like I said, last 17 games, 16 fumbles. In the last 23 games, he has 20 fumbles. So the Dolphins need to create some turnovers here because he's not somebody that throws a lot of interceptions. He's more somebody who's going to airmail the football as opposed to putting it into harm's way. So we saw last week that when you win the turnover battle and you win it up front at the line of scrimmage, that's the team that usually wins the game. It's why the Patriots convincingly beat the Dolphins here last week. And that's going to do it for our breakdown of the Dolphins-Bills matchup here on the FinSide. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and all of our other social media outlets. I'm Brian Cat NFL. Paul is Fanatic_Pick. And if it's not on the right side and it's not on the left side, it is on the FinSide.